I want you to just imagine for a second that you're stepping off a train.
Right.
You've just survived 4 brutal days, crammed inside this sealed cattle car
Right.
with like 90 other desperate people.
Hmm.
The stench of overflowing urine buckets is just suffocating. You're parched, you're exhausted, you're terrified. And then the doors finally slide open to the freezing night air.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And immediately, you're hit by 2 things. The sickening smell of burning flesh and the sight of this massive brick chimney belching flames into the dark sky.
Mm.
And within minutes, a meticulously dressed man steps forward. He asks you a highly specific question.
And that's the moment, right?
Exactly, because the answer you give him in that split second will determine absolutely whether you live or die.
It is a terrifying, almost unimaginable scenario. But for over 1 million people, this is not a thought experiment. This was reality.
Yeah, and today we're taking a deep dive into an incredibly chilling historical document. We're looking at translated excerpts from Auschwitz, a doctor's eyewitness account written by Dr. Miklos Nyiszli.
Such a profound piece of history.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
But we aren't just reading his, harrowing physical account. We're actually pairing it with these psychological prefaces written by psychoanalyst Bruno Bettelheim and editor Richard Seaver. Our mission today is to look way beyond just the historical horrors of the Holocaust and explore the terrifying psychology of survival.
Which is a really heavy but necessary topic.
Yeah, we're going to examine exactly how far a human being will go to stay alive and the intricate psychological traps we build to live with the unimaginable. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, we really need to ground ourselves in the mechanics of what is happening here, because this isn't just a story about the Holocaust. It is fundamentally a study of the human survival instinct and its darkest paradoxes.
Yeah.
When we talk about survival, we often picture, heroism, fighting back against the elements or against an enemy. But Dr. Nyiszli's account forces us to look at a completely different kind of survival, one that's rooted in terrible compromises, in the surrender of morality for the sake of simply taking one more breath.
And that horrific compromise begins, like the literal moment he arrives. So picture this. It's May 1944. Over 1 million Hungarian Jews have been marked for death. Dr. Nyiszli steps off that train onto a barren landscape of yellow clay.
Just utter desolation.
Yeah, all he sees are concrete posts and miles of electrified barbed wire. And then he looks up at that chimney. It's an enormous square brick structure, flames shooting out of its 4 corners. And because of his past life as a medical student in Germany, he recognizes it immediately. He knows it's a crematorium.
Right. Nyiszli isn't naive here. He knows exactly what he's looking at. The system he is thrust into operates with this clinical, terrifying efficiency. The selection process on the platform is overseen by Dr. Josef Mengele, the chief medical officer of Auschwitz.
The angel of death.
Exactly. The SS guards systematically split the families apart right there on the platform. Mothers, the elderly, the sick, and children under 14 are sent to the left.
And they tell them, this is the sick part, they tell them they're just going for a disinfecting bath.
Yes, in this calm, almost paternal tone. It's chilling. Meanwhile, the strong men and women are sent off to the right.
And Mengele steps in front of the remaining group and issues his proposition. He specifically asks for doctors who are trained in German universities, who have experience in pathology and forensic medicine, to step forward.
Right.
He warns them that they must be highly capable, or else, and it's like trying to pass your medical boards while standing on a trap door. You know the wrong answer means death, but do you really want the job?
That is a perfect way to put it. It wasn't just a threat, it was a psychological wedge. It forces this immediate, brutal calculation. By asking for highly specific professional credentials, Mengele is offering a mirage of the old world. He is speaking directly to their former identities.
Yeah, and Nyiszli relies on his extensive training from Breslau and steps forward. By doing so, he secures his temporary survival.
But at an unimaginable cost.
Exactly. The crushing reality is revealed moments later. That group sent to the left, which included many of his older, esteemed medical colleagues, well, they weren't going to a bath. They marched straight into the gas chambers.
So by stepping forward, Nyiszli separated himself from the masses, but he also firmly embedded himself into the machinery of their destruction.
Yeah. And while his physical life is spared, the psychological demolition of the man he was, it begins immediately. The induction process is entirely designed to erase his identity.
It's so systematic.
It is. His head and body are violently shaved. Then they scrub him down with a calcium chloride solution that is so strong it literally burns his eyes, blinding him for minutes.
And that physical blinding, it feels almost symbolic of what the camp requires him to become, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%. Because right after the scrubbing, another prisoner comes over with a blue ink needle and tattoos the number A8450 onto his arm. Nyiszli himself notes that in that exact moment, Dr. Miklos Nyiszli ceased to exist. He was now just a number.
It's just another object in the camp. And the physical brutality of the daily routine there is just staggering.
Yeah, walk us through that.
Well, the barracks are designed to hold 800 to 1,000 people. They're crammed in so tightly they sleep on top of each other, literally kicking and biting just to get a few inches of space to breathe.
God, that's horrific.
And at 3 a.m., they are violently woken up by guards wielding rubber truncheons. Then comes the appel, the roll call. Hours and hours of standing perfectly still in the freezing rain while guards inspect the lines.
And the sheer bureaucratic malice of the appel? I mean, it's hard to even process. It wasn't just about counting prisoners. The dead had to be counted alongside the living.
That detail is just haunting.
If someone died in the night, the surviving prisoners literally had to drag their naked corpses out into the freezing rain and hold them upright so the SS inspectors could make the numbers match perfectly.
I want you to really consider the psychological mechanism at play there as a listener. This was not merely physical torture or a lack of resources. It was a deliberate, engineered system of bureaucratic detachment.
Breaking them down.
Exactly. By forcing the living to treat their dead friends and family members as mere props for a ledger, the SS stripped away every ounce of human dignity. It breaks the spirit so entirely that the body becomes just an object, just a number to be tallied. Once a prisoner views themselves and others as mere objects, the instinct to fight back is fundamentally broken.
And Nyiszli's path diverges so sharply from the rest of the prisoners right at this point. Yeah. Because he proved himself useful to Mengele, he becomes a privileged prisoner.
A very dangerous position to be in.
Right. He didn't wear the striped, lice-infested rags. He gets to wear civilian clothes. He sleeps in a real bed in Barrack 12. And he is surrounded by other eminent European doctors, men like Dr. Levy from Strasbourg and Dr. Gras from Zagreb.
And what are they doing in Barrack 12?
They are desperately trying to treat the living dead. These are prisoners who have been reduced to skeletal figures suffering from incurable dysentery and massive open sores. But the catch is, the doctors have to do it with absolutely no medicine.
It's a tragic pantomime. They are going through the motions of their profession in a place where healing is fundamentally impossible. But Nyiszli's role is even darker than that. He isn't sent to treat the living. He is sent to a dirty shed with a rough wooden table. This is his new pathology lab.
And here comes the ultimate test of his position. 2 bodies are wheeled into his shed. They are marked with chalk ZS for Zur section, which means for dissection.
Okay.
One body has been hanged, the other electrocuted. Mengele and several SS officers file into the room. They stand in a tight circle around Nyiszli, watching his every move like a deadly jury.
What's fascinating here is Nyiszli's reaction. It's crucial to understanding the psychology of survival. He doesn't freeze. He doesn't break down.
He just goes to work.
Exactly. He relies on his rigorous training from his university days. He meticulously dissects the bodies, calmly and accurately answering every single question the SS officers throw at him. He passes the test flawlessly.
And it gets weirder, because later, his fellow prisoner doctors even ask him to teach them how to perform lumbar punctures on the corpses, which he does.
Yes. And this is the exact moment where the psychology becomes incredibly difficult to untangle. On the surface, you see incredible composure under pressure. But psychoanalyst Bruno Bettelheim views this exact moment as something much more insidious.
Yeah, Bettelheim's take is intense.
It really is. Bettelheim argues that Nyiszli survives by completely retreating into his professional competence. He clings to the mechanics of being a doctor to avoid the reality of what he is actually doing.
Right, focusing on the details.
By taking pride in his medical skill, a skill now completely devoid of any moral implications, Nyiszli manages to delude himself. He convinces himself he is acting as a doctor when in reality he has become a highly efficient tool for the Nazi war machine. He is using his medical oath to serve mass murderers.
It's an extreme form of compartmentalization. It's like a pilot flying a plane that is actively crashing into the ground, but choosing to obsessively adjust the radio dials instead of pulling up.
That's a great analogy.
If you focus entirely on the one small system you can control, the scalpel, the anatomy, the perfect lumbar puncture, you don't have to acknowledge the ground rushing up at you. You don't have to think about the fact that the ashes of your people are falling outside the window.
And that compartmentalization is the bridge to the central, haunting question that Bettelheim's preface tries to answer. With thousands of people being murdered every single day, with the smell of the crematoriums constantly hanging in the air, why did millions march passively to their deaths?
Yeah, Bettelheim introduces a Freudian concept here known as the death instinct or the principle of inertia. But how does that actually work in the brain? Like, what causes someone to just stop fighting for their life?
Well, the human brain is wired to calculate risk and reward based on the rules of society, right?
Okay.
If I do X, I will be safe. If I run, I might escape. But the Nazi extermination system was designed to create total cognitive overload. When all traditional societal structures collapse, when the state, the police, and the laws that usually protect you suddenly turn against you with incomprehensible violence, the cognitive load of trying to calculate survival becomes just too heavy.
The brain just short circuits.
Exactly. The brain fractures, the death instinct takes over. Faced with an entirely incomprehensible horror, people simply gave up the will to live. It became psychologically easier to submit to the inertia of the system than to fight a battle they logically knew they couldn't win.
And they masked that submission with the illusion of normalcy, this philosophy of business as usual. They clung to their daily routines, hoping against hope that if they just kept their heads down, maybe the gas chambers right in front of them would somehow disappear.
And it wasn't even a conscious masking, though. Bettelheim argues it was an involuntary psychological retreat. They continued to act as if the old rules still applied in a world where the rules had been entirely rewritten by madmen.
I have to push back on Bettelheim's framework here, though. I mean, isn't it incredibly harsh to analyze victims in this way?
It can definitely feel that way.
Right. Isn't hoping for the best or trying to maintain your family routine just a natural human defense mechanism when you're terrified? It feels almost like victim blaming to say they succumbed to a death instinct just because they wanted a sliver of normalcy.
Look, it is a completely natural defense mechanism, and Bettelheim's theories are highly controversial for exactly that reason. His tone can feel merciless. But Bettelheim's core argument is that in a state of absolute extremity, relying on natural defense mechanisms becomes fatal. He famously and controversially points to the diary of Anne Frank to illustrate this.
Wait, really? He critiques the Frank family's strategy of hiding together.
He does. Bettelheim points out that the Frank family desperately wanted to keep their family life exactly as it was. They hid together, they tried to maintain their routines, they continued their education.
Which seems so beautiful and human.
It is, but Bettelheim argues that because they stayed together as a family unit, continuing business as usual in a hidden annex, they made themselves a much easier target to capture.
Wow.
He suggests that true resistance, a true embrace of the life instinct over the death instinct, would have meant accepting the terrifying new reality. It would have meant separating, hiding individually with non-Jewish families, or even acquiring a weapon to take down just one SS officer.
So he essentially argues that the world loves Anne Frank's diary specifically because it glorifies this idea of business as usual.
Yes.
Like it comforts us. It allows us to focus on the goodness of humanity, the beautiful spirit of a young girl, and mentally ignore the brutal, undeniable reality of the extermination camps.
That is his exact critique. By romanticizing the attempt to maintain a normal life in the face of absolute evil, we blind ourselves to the radical, sometimes violent actions that are actually required to survive it.
That's a really tough pill to swallow.
It is. If the system is designed to systematically murder you, playing by any of its rules is essentially suicide. To survive a system of total destruction, you have to completely break with the inertia of business as usual. You have to step outside of the expected routine.
And that profound psychological break, it's completely embodied by the most incredible exception in this entire deep dive. The 12th Sonderkommando.
Yes, their story is remarkable.
For those who don't know, the Sonderkommandos were the special prisoner units forced to actually operate the gas chambers and crematoriums. They were kept alive for a few months, forced to do the most horrifying work imaginable, and then murdered and replaced by the next group.
A completely diabolical system.
Yeah. And out of 14 different Sonderkommando groups, the 13th marched passively to their deaths. But the 12th, they woke up.
They broke the inertia, they realized that their deaths were absolutely inevitable, and they chose to reclaim their agency. They orchestrated an armed rebellion.
And the numbers are just staggering. All 853 members of the 12th Sonderkommando died in the uprising. But before they fell, They killed 70 SS officers and severely damaged one of the crematoriums.
Incredible.
They didn't survive, but they completely shattered the illusion of SS invincibility. They refused to be walking corpses. They chose to die fighting as men.
The critical psychological question is why only one group out of 14 rebelled. And Bettelheim argues it was because they finally shed the delusion that they could somehow outsmart the system by cooperating with it.
Right, they stopped playing along.
They accepted their fate, and in doing so, freed themselves to fight back. They stopped hoping for a miraculous rescue. They abandoned the psychological comfort of business as usual and took the only power they had left, the power to inflict damage on their murderers.
It is a devastating but profoundly inspiring moment in an otherwise incredibly bleak history. And it highlights the incredible paradox of Dr. Miklos Nyiszli himself. Because he survived, he lived to bear witness, and because of his choices, we have this invaluable first-hand historical record.
Which is so important.
We know the exact clinical details of how the Nazi extermination machine operated, specifically because he was on the inside. But he survived by becoming a willing cog in the very machine he despised. He used his sacred medical oath, his profound knowledge of the human body, to assist men like Josef Mengele.
And that is the deeply uncomfortable truth at the heart of this source material. We want survival stories to be pure. We want clear heroes and unambiguous villains. But Nyiszli was a victim who became an accomplice in order to survive.
It's so messy.
It is. Richard Seaver, in his introduction, forces us to hold up a mirror. We aren't in Auschwitz. But the psychological traps that allowed Auschwitz to happen, the creeping apathy, the desperate clinging to business as usual, the prioritization of professional competence over moral consequence, those traps are totally mundane.
They really are.
They are human, and they are everywhere.
It's the danger of just putting your head down and doing your job. If you just focus on the spreadsheet or the code or the policy, if you just stare at the dials like that pilot in the crashing plane, you don't have to look out the window and see what your work is actually building.
Whenever we ignore the suffering of others because confronting it would disrupt our daily routine, or whenever we excuse unethical behavior because it's being done efficiently or professionally, we are echoing that same fatal inertia.
Yeah.
The Holocaust didn't happen overnight. It happened because millions of people accepted minor degradations, step by step, choosing the comfort of the familiar over the friction of resistance, until the familiar became a death camp.
Man. That's a lot to process. I want to thank you for joining us on this heavy but incredibly vital deep dive today. I want to leave you with a final thought, something to chew on as you go about your day. Think about the systems you participate in every single day, at work, in your community, in your society.
A really important reflection.
If you were truly forced to choose, where does your professional pride end and your moral responsibility begin? Are there areas in your own life where you were just keeping your head down, playing along with business as usual? Because remember, well, there is always a train. There is always a trapdoor. And eventually, a meticulously dressed man will ask you a question. What will your answer be?